Professor Uriel Reichman, the founder and president of the IDC Herzliya, Professor Alex Mintz, the director of the Institute for Policy and Strategy, IPS, and the chairman of the conference, Professor Sami Smucha, Professor Faida Nasser Abu Hija, Bambi Sheleg, distinguished guests, MK Broshi, ambassadors, Uriel Tubi, the Director General of the Office of the President, distinguished guests. A year ago, Professor Alex Mintz asked me to take part in this fascinating project of turning the vision of the President of shared Israeliness of turning it into an actual plan. Of course, I was happy at the invitation, and I had no idea how fascinating and how challenging conceptually it would be, and how rewarding it would be in the development of knowledge and thinking, and no less so in the recognition and the discourse with outstanding people from all parts of Israeli society. Who of the steering committee will I mention in my introductory remarks, I thought to myself. But every name I raised in my head, three others, no less worthy, came up as well, because there were 29 members on the committee, and the time, we don't have enough time to mention all of them, although I would like to. I would like to mention each and every one of the members of the staff of the President's residence. Lucky is the President, and lucky are we that they are the public servants who are working here in this house. And there were also the experts who devoted of their time and enriched us with their monumental knowledge and depth of thought. All volunteers who did this in addition to their day jobs. I would like to express my heartfelt gratitude for this wonderful year to all of you. I thought a great deal about what is unique about Israel in the fact that it is complex from an ethnic, cultural point of view. The security aspect in the relations between the communities, this exists in other countries, such as in Europe now. The fear that parts of the community are unwilling to accept democratic liberal values, this fear exists in other countries too. The fear of changing the character of society, after all, this is what is guiding the steps of most of the countries of the EU. The blaming certain sectors that they are not contributing their equal part to the economy, this we can see from the literature in other societies as well. Relating to different sectors as being different, a melting pot for those who have come, and so on. We find this in Spain and in other places too. And the idea, the need to recognize the existing establishment, the need for the existing establishment to recognize that its feeling of superiority is no longer suitable or justified, this too exists in other countries. Indeed, what is unique about Israel is that all of these things exist at the same time in Israeli society, and no less so the rate of change. And this is a challenge, a big challenge, and that is the great importance that the President, in his speech a year ago, did not make do with placing a mirror before Israeli society. He presented his vision for renewing hope by means of his shared Israeliness. We are combining the analytic stage with the stage of presenting the recommendations for action and implementation to actually actualize that vision. And that is what this session will deal with, and I have the honor of calling upon the first speaker, Professor Uriel Reichman. Professor Reichman is a serial entrepreneur, an educational entrepreneur, a social entrepreneur, even a political entrepreneur. His dissatisfaction with the existing state of affairs, that is what caused him to open and establish the IDC, to establish his movement to change the electoral system, to be involved in political initiatives, and to turn the IDC into an institution that combines the spirit of entrepreneurship, free competition, with deep social commitment. Professor Reichman has been the president of the IDC since its establishment. it's always a problem to quote yourself. But I would like, after mentioning my main points, I would like get a little bit more into the thesis in this context, more deeply, and to say some things that are not easy to hear. As noted, President Rivlin asked the question, we must honestly ask, what do these four sectors have in common? Do we even have a common denominator of values that can connect these different sectors together? That was the question that I went out to examine and explore together with my colleagues. As I said earlier, I looked in the professional literature and we found that there were three criteria for a majority. One is sociological power, to what extent there is one group that controls assets or military power or something of that nature. And we said that's not relevant for the state of Israel. The power is distributed, perhaps even too much amongst society. The second test that often comes up is the ethnic cultural test. And the third test is the test of values and regime. And these three criteria create or demonstrate a clear majority. It is the ethnic cultural aspect determines that the majority, or the massive majority in Israeli society, defines itself as Jewish. There can be different reasons for this, a religious or national or cultural historic reason or any other reason. But despite the fact that sometimes it's difficult to define the relationship or explain it, this exists. And from this it follows that the aspiration of all Jews is shared life, sovereignty, and to have control and autonomy over their fate and dignity. And this is even more clear on the conceptual governmental level. All the three sectors accept the democratic point of view that prevents violence and preserves the freedoms. And without democracy, it would be impossible to have a shared life of these tribes. And so, as I said earlier, the concept Jewish and democratic is therefore not only a framework of values that appears in basic law, human dignity and freedom, but it is a fact. It is a decision by the majority of the people. And so my thesis is that any serious harm caused to any of these organs can threaten the connections and bonds between us. And based on this approach, we must monitor and protect these two components of society. With your permission, I would like to relate first to the subject of the nation state. Prime Minister Netanyahu and Defense Minister Lieberman recently declared that they support the two-state solution. I say it is important that there be a cabinet decision, a resolution that supports this. And this will clarify our position inwardly, which I consider more important than externally. And the continued settlement of Jewish settlements throughout the West Bank creates or will create a binational state. It will be impossible to prevent rights in this area. The experience of the world proves that a reality in which two peoples that are more or less equal in size living in a single state framework, this leads to violence and the result of which is either the separation of the state or the destruction of one of the peoples. We only have to think about India and Pakistan, the USSR, Syria and Iraq, which are falling apart amidst bloodshed. And there are opposite examples, even worse ones, the Tamils in Sri Lanka who were defeated, and other groups that completely disappeared over history as a result of that violent confrontation. And these things are all the more so in the case of us and the Palestinians. The tension between Judaism and Islam, which has intensified because of the religious radicalism, the history of the confrontations, the different historical narratives or opposing historical narratives, all of these make it clear that a single state for the two states will lead to internal violence, which is the worst of all. It is much more dangerous than violence from across the border. In other words, a democratic state of all its citizens from the Jordan to the Mediterranean will end in violence and bloodshed. Today, the number of Palestinians, including in Israel, Judea and Samaria and Gaza, compared to the Jewish citizens of Israel, is 52% Arabs to 48%, 52% Jews to 48% Jews. Very quickly, that situation could change for the worse. And it's impossible to exist together, and there will be violence as a result, serious violence. And the forecast of an Arab state that controls Jewish areas will necessarily lead to emigration. What I am saying is not easy to hear. Many of the finest sons and daughters of this country, settlers in the Samaria and in places like that, are willing to take very serious risks, security risks, risks of quality of life, of isolation for themselves, but they do it out of the belief that they are saving a piece of homeland for the Jewish people. The tragedy is that this activity, which comes from Zionist motivation, could lead us to a very serious problem. To a problem, if to use military terminology, a problem that we are creating with our own hands based on blind idealism into a national trap that could be fateful. The idea of two states is, of course, subject to security conditions, and any arrangement will be very complex. But the idea of two states subject to security arrangements enjoys public support of the majority of the public. And this will it is important to bridge over disagreements and assure the continued existence of our national home. President Rivlin, and this will bring me to the second subject regarding democracy, President Rivlin noted the difference between the sectors in order to establish a new approach of partnership. I won't review the four criteria, the sense of security of each sector, that its principles are preserved. He spoke about sharing responsibility for the fate and future of society. He spoke about the very important principle of equality, and he talked about the new Israeli agenda that would be created. In my previous remarks, I noted that all the foundations of partnership that have been discussed don't need to be grounded in a new constitution. They're already grounded, and I quoted this, in the Declaration of Israel's independence. Clear and simple. With great detail. The development of the land for all its residents,
complete equality, political and social equality for all citizens, freedom of religion and culture and so on, and especially a call to the Arab population to participate in building the land based on full citizenship and equal citizenship and representation in all institutions. In other words, all the goals of partnership are already included in and in the context of the Israeli democratic approach. And the question is, why aren't these things being carried out? Why does the president need to stand here and talk about equality and about protecting the values of each of the groups and about the shared responsibility? And this is not happening. And I say that the reasons for this can be found in the behavior of the political system, the people of the media, in education, and how our political system functions. I won't get into the subject to which I devoted 8 years of my life, changing the electoral system with the problems of all the splinter parties and all the various difficulties to make decisions and so on. I won't get into that now, but that is one of the reasons. But the party splits creates a situation where each party serves only a particular community, and it maintains its loyalty to that particular group which supports it politically. Often the result of that is that the political discourse is filled with incitement, with the fostering of internal hatreds, with revenge, with fanaticism. The media often oversteps its bounds, and we hear the shouting and irresponsible rhetoric. Can one even hold a dialogue in such a situation? Democracy, as has been said here a number of times, is based on the decision of the majority, but no less so on human dignity, every person. And this is the foundation of freedom, equality, and humanity. I don't think it's impossible to work in that spirit. Isn't there a human responsibility to care for the helpless members of society, no matter what sector they belong to? Isn't it right to focus on the most needy towns and communities and to work against discrimination? Don't we need to encourage the format of or the model of mixed cities like Akko and Tel Aviv-Yafo? Often, in the face of terror and religious fanaticism, it's difficult to preserve our basic principles. But today, more than ever, we must face and stand up to hatred and violence. We must not accept hatred on the part of Arabs, against Arabs, just as we do not accept it against Jews. We must state clearly and loudly against all those who give violent expression to their feelings, and we must not allow vigilante groups to grow up among us. Political leadership must stand up against these phenomena. It would be a terrible situation if politicians exploit the rift in society for political capital. Moreover, politicians must have the courage to stand up against sectorialism and to enforce true partnership and sharing the burden of responsibility. That is true leadership. That is a leadership of sharing and not alienation. In order to create an Israeli common denominator, everyone must give up something, too. I call once again upon the ultra-Orthodox community to enable core studies. Indeed, they must accept, we need to accept sectoral studies, but every child must study and learn what is the meaning of democracy. They must know that there are other people They need to be equipped with a toolbox that will enable them, if they wish to find their place in productive society. Israeli society has the basic tools. We have a tradition, a Jewish tradition of solidarity and chesed, charity. We have among us a built-in desire to be a model society. We bear the values from our Jewish heritage and our democratic tradition. The new Israeli agenda is based on that. I believe that the sectors are growing closer to one another. There is openness, and with a settlement with the Palestinians, the Arab population in Israel will serve as a bridge of progress and advancements together with the Palestinian state. This will unite all the sectors of society. Sometimes we are called to take up arms, to kill or be killed. This brutality is often unavoidable, but we must not turn this into a way of life. Even when we are enraged and we are angry at people and soldiers and civilians who have been killed, we must remember that the violence that has taken hold of part of the Muslim world must not take hold of us. What we need is to hold on to reality. We must set clear boundaries of morality for our soldiers going out to battle, to allow the Supreme Court to protect our shared values and go back to our Declaration of Independence and view it as the framework for the new Israeli agenda. The partnership of Israel and its values have a new partner. The president of the state, who represents all citizens, has taken his place at the side of all these values. And this is a crucial step that will enable people to rise above their tribe and stretch out their hand to the other. We must help the president in his job, help ourselves to turn a shared fate into a shared life. Not a political force, but a force that will mitigate politics and help dialogue on the ground, will fight violence in many places where people remain silent for reasons of convenience, to silence the inciters, those who incite from within and from without. I hereby pledge to the President, to President Rivlin, that the IDC will rise up to this challenge. I say to my colleagues in the academy, and I call upon the graduates and my colleagues to join us to find a path of humanity and human dignity. And I would like to congratulate President Rivlin for his initiative. Thank you very much.
Thank you very much, Professor Reichman, for your words, for presenting the reality as complex as it is, but also for that